Alright, so the Bussa Revolt or the Barbados Slave Revolt of 1816. But first, some background first though. So Barbados was a central commercial point to which enslaved people from the Gold Coast were imported before further dispersal to other British colonies such as Jamaica and British Guyana or Guyana. So enslaved people were imported from the Gold Coast to Barbados from the 17th century onwards to about the early 19th century. The slave revolt on the 14th of April 1816 in Barbados was led by an enslaved man named Bussa. Not much is known about his life before the revolt or even after. Scholars are today currently debating his possible origins. Bussa was likely a Coromantee, yet there is also reasonable speculation that he might have been descended from the Igbo people of modern-day southeastern Nigeria. It is also possible that Bussa had both ancestries, since enslaved people trafficked before the rebellion to the mid to late 16th century shifted to colonial demands for enslaved Africans from the slave coast, so he could have been captured in a Coromantee tribe and been just chilling in Nigeria waiting to be sold, right? So where he was kidnapped primarily from the Gold Coast and underwent subsequent creolization of the island's enslaved African population. The Bussa Rebellion, along with other persistent slave rebellions through the Caribbean, had given the British colonial government a further incentive to pass and enact the Slavery Abolition Act of 1833, officially abolishing slavery as an institution in all of its Caribbean territories. Now, the myth, the man, the legend, Bussa. So Bussa was a free man in West Africa as a possible Igbo descent and was captured by African merchants, sold to European slave traders, and transported to Barbados in the late 18th century as a slave. Where under the Barbados Slave Code, slavery was legal since 1661. Not much is known about him, and there's no early records of him, and virtually no biographical information about Bussa is available. Records show a slave named Bussa was a ranger, a head officer among the slaves, on Bailey's plantation in the parish of St. Philip around the time of the rebellion. This position would have given Bussa more freedom of movement than the average slave and would have made it easier for him to plan and coordinate the rebellion. Now, what everybody came here for, right? The revolt, or actually the revolts. The revolts arose at a time when the British Parliament was working on schemes to ameliorate the conditions of slaves in the Caribbean. Ameliorate means pretty much just to lax tension, still keep it tight, but just cool out a bit, right? Preparations on this rebellion began soon after the House of Assembly discussed and rejected the Imperial Registry Bill in November 1815, which would have registered West Indian slaves and keep them more closely together and kind of just connect them a bit more, right? Historians believe that slaves interpreted some of the parliamentary proposals as preparatory to emancipation and took action when emancipation did not take place, rightfully so. Amongst Bussa's collaborators were Joseph Pitt, Washington Franklin, a free man actually, John, just John, and Nancy Gregg, a senior domestic slave, and Jackie on Simmons' plantation, as well as other slaves, drivers, and even artisans. Jackie was actually a Creole driver and was an important figure in the rebellion. The planning was undertaken at a number of sugar estates, including Bailey's plantation, where it all began. By February 1816, Bussa was an African driver, one of the few of his position. He and his collaborators decided to start the revolt on the 14th of April, Easter Sunday, 1816. Bussa, King Wilshire, Dick Bailey, and Johnny led the slaves into battle at Bailey's plantation on Tuesday, the 16th of April, 1816. He commanded some 400 rebels, men and women, most of whom were believed to be Creole, born on the islands already. He was killed in battle. His forces actually continued to fight on even though they were defeated by superior firepower of the colonial militia. The rebellion failed, but its influence was significant to the future of Barbados and, dare I say, even the future of the Caribbean. Now, the legacy. Bussa remains a popular figure in Barbados, as he should. In 1985, 169 years after his rebellion, the Emancipation statue created by Carl Buchhagen was unveiled at Highgate Hall in the parish of St. Michael, which is actually next to Sky Mall now. Many Barbadians attribute the statue to Bussa and they name it the Bussa statue, even though it was supposed to be an amalgamation of all the slaves that actually fought for that rebellion and stuff like that. But yeah, we could call it the Bussa statue pretty much. But in 1998, the Parliament of Barbados named Bussa as one of the 11 national heroes of Barbados. Well, you're going to say one of the original, but one of the 11, and then reanimates 12. So from here, and with that, the Bussa Rebellion of 1816, the penultimate episode, the one to be the finale of the BIM saga of, well, November. But when you think about it, right? 1816, 400 people. You're up against maybe 100 people, but with guns. But you know, there's actually a ancient Native American proverb where it pretty much says your actions today would dedicate and dictate the next 7 generations. So the actions on the 16th of April, 1816, 100 and almost 200 years ago, pretty much dictated the last 7 centuries of, no, not the last 7, that's crazy, man. The last about 250 years of British colonial rule, slavery, the Caribbean, and of course Barbados. But epic monologue aside, just think about it, right? You're the British, it's 1816. Barbados is literally, for all intents purposes, as flat as a rock. If you can't really pertain and hold on to slavery, pretty much where nobody could run, nobody doesn't really know how to swim, build canoes, build boats. Well, some do, but if you can't really hold on to slavery in Barbados, right? How would you think holding on to slavery in Jamaica would be, with mountains and hills? How would you think holding on to St. Vincent would be, with scattered islands on volcanoes? St. Lucia, with a large population, like many times over. And even smaller islands like Helena Island and stuff like that, even though they're the Atlantic and not really slave-holding countries. Like, if you can't hold on to slavery on a tiny flat rock in the middle of the Atlantic, just adjacent of the Caribbean Sea, could you really possibly hold on to Jamaica, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Kitts and Nevis, or even Trinidad and Tobago? So let that sink into you. And here we go, the penultimate episode of Bimvember. Yeah, Bimvember. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was fun for you. Hope you enjoyed and learned something. Until next time, epic monologue. That wasn't really too epic, but really interesting to think about. The Slave Act of 1833. It all started with Dick, Johnny, Bussa, and of course our girl, Miss Griggs. Just think about that. Anyway, hope you learned something. Happy independence and bye-bye.